scrutinised, open for the world to see.
If I could ask Mr. President, if I could have indulgence, no, if you can just give me minutes. Or could I take it on notice?
Yep. Of harassment.
I'm going to leave my talking to the court today, thank you.
This scandal has been going on for almost 5 years, so it needs no introduction. The allegations of a political cover-up by Brittany Higgins continue to reverberate. I often get asked the question, when will it end? Well, it's not going to end anytime soon, I'm afraid.
The truth is now binding on Brittany, on David, on journalists. It is binding. The fight for the truth, after 5 years, is now out there.
New letters that were filed as part of a statement of claim in the federal court this week by Linda Reynolds exposed some really extraordinary details of a settlement that a lot of us could never quite understand. So we've been given a chance with these previously confidential legal letters to look under the hood of a political and legal juggernaut that was racing in one direction, steamrolling over the interests and reputation of Linda Reynolds towards a settlement of $2.4 million with Brittany Higgins. The letters were between the Commonwealth's lawyers, HWL Ebsworth, and Brittany Higgins' lawyers at Bloomer's Personal Injury Lawyers. And these letters, it's important to remember, had never been shared with Linda Reynolds or her legal team. They only came to light when Linda Reynolds took a defamation action against Brittany Higgins in the WA Supreme Court. Linda Reynolds and her lawyers had subpoenaed a stash of legal documents, exchanges between, on the one hand, the Commonwealth's lawyers and on the other, Brittany Higgins' lawyers. And they received those letters. They weren't ultimately used in the defamation case, but they will be used in a new separate set of claims that Linda Reynolds has filed in the federal court this week. And those letters, again, remember, not shared with Linda Reynolds, throw extraordinary light onto the extent to which the Commonwealth was determined to push Linda Reynolds out of the way in order to get to that settlement of $2.4 million. Now, I need to take a step back to explain, but in the normal circumstances of making a claim against the Commonwealth, a plaintiff has 3 years. Under the statute of limitations, you have 3 years to make that claim. Brittany Higgins had already asked for 2 extensions and received 2 extensions in relation to the claims, very serious claims, that she had made against the then Senator Linda Reynolds. But then, on the third occasion that Brittany Higgins and her lawyers asked for an extension, Linda Reynolds and her lawyers said no. We will give an extension on one condition though, and that is that you file in court, as is the usual process, remember, your particulars of your claims. In other words, the details of what you're saying that Linda Reynolds and others did. Now, it's important to remember this is a normal process, that those particulars, as they're called, get filed in a courtroom. And the 6th of December was a very important date because a scheduled mediation was to take place on the 13th of December.
I believe the truth matters. And I've spent my entire adult life serving my nation. 35 years in the Army, 11 years in the Senate. And I've served because I believe in our democracy, I believe in our country.
In an interview that Linda Reynolds had with me this week, which is the first interview that she's had since winning that defamation case against Brittany Higgins, she explained it. She said, I was dancing at shadows. I needed to know the exact details of the claims that were being made against me. So I said, file them in court by the 6th. Well, Brittany Higgins never filed her statement of claim in a courtroom. And we could never understand why. Now we know what happened after Linda Reynolds and her legal team said that there would be no more extensions except for Brittany Higgins filing that statement of claim on the 6th of December. That day, in fact that night, at 10:06 p.m, an email from the Commonwealth's lawyers, HWL Ellsworth, was received by Linda Reynolds' lawyers at Clayton Utz that said that the Commonwealth was taking over Linda Reynolds' defence. This is 2 hours before the statute of limitations point was due to expire. And here was the Commonwealth taking over Linda Reynolds' defence.
My first and only concern was for the welfare of my staff member. I received and took all appropriate advice from Ministerial and Parliamentary Services, and all of that information was communicated to my former staff member at the time. It was actually me who suggested that she might like to consider talking to the Australian Federal Police, and it was actually me who facilitated the first meeting with the Australian Federal Police with an appropriately qualified officer. And the process from there was a matter between my staff member and the AFP, appropriately so.
The Commonwealth did more than just tell Linda Reynolds' legal team that they were taking over her defence. They also said to Reynolds in the same letter at 10:06 p.m. on the 6th of December that she was not to turn up to the mediation, that she was not to talk about this publicly. In fact, she was to keep all of the details completely confidential. Now, the next day, and this is where we have new letters that have never been seen before between the Commonwealth's lawyers and between Brittany Higgins' lawyers. The very next day, on the 7th of December, the Commonwealth's lawyers at Ebsworth's send a letter to Brittany Higgins' lawyers saying that they will waive any statute of limitations point that arises in relation to the claims that Higgins was making, including the claims against Linda Reynolds. Now, this explains how the Commonwealth steamrolled towards that settlement with Brittany Higgins just days later. It was quite extraordinary. And Reynolds told me in her interview with me that had she known that the Commonwealth was going to waive that limitation point with Higgins, she definitely would have taken steps to protect her rights, the limitation point issue, and her reputation, obviously, so that she could defend herself. But she was never given that chance because that letter of the 7th of December was not shared with Linda Reynolds or her legal team. There are more peculiarities though. It doesn't end there in this new stash of confidential legal letters that are filed as part of Linda Reynolds' new claims against the Commonwealth and against the Commonwealth's lawyers, Ebsworth's. There were letters shared again between the Commonwealth's lawyers and Higgins' lawyers, which detailed a bundle of new material that was being filed as part of the mediation by Higgins, making new claims against Linda Reynolds and setting out a new proposed settlement amount. Again, these letters were not shared with Linda Reynolds. And it's only because of Linda Reynolds' determination to proceed with that defamation trial that these documents were subpoenaed during that trial that we can now understand the extent to which the Commonwealth appears to have gone to get to that settlement. And there are still other documents that were subpoenaed as part of that defamation trial that will now form part of new claims that Linda Reynolds has made that we're now aware of. And that is that there were 2 medical reports that were written in relation to the alleged psychiatric injuries that Brittany Higgins had suffered and was claiming for against the Commonwealth. 2 medical reports, both dated on the 6th of January 2022. One was received by Higgins' lawyers on the 31st of January. And it said that, in fact, 100% of the alleged psychiatric injury suffered by Brittany Higgins arose from the alleged rape in Parliament House. But there was a second report, and it was dated the same day by the same doctor on the 6th of January 2022 that was received on the 9th of February by Higgins' lawyers, which set out a different scenario. It said that Brittany Higgins' psychiatric injuries had been caused 60% by the rape and 40% by the mistreatment that she claimed against Linda Reynolds and others. Obviously, these 2 medical reports will form part of the new action that Linda Reynolds has filed in the federal court this week against the Commonwealth and against the Commonwealth's lawyers. It's important to just go back and note that whilst this came up in the defamation case, the doctor who wrote these 2 reports was not cross-examined. Justice Tottle decided that it wasn't relevant to that case, but it may be relevant to the new case. So, where does that leave us? It means that one of the longest and most damaging political scandals that this country has seen is not yet over, as much as many of us would like it to be.